The road to the biggest stage for our Legion baseball teams runs through West Fargo this year. Young Field is preparing to host the Central Plains Region Tournament for the Legion Baseball World Series. The West Fargo Patriots were already set to compete in the tournament as hosts, but they wanted to bring a little bit more hardware into the bracket. The Patriots have already won a tournament in the past week, winning the state title on Saturday. The Pats securing the AA crown with an extra innings walk-off victory over Fargo Post 2 with this home run you see right here. West Fargo handing Post 2 both of their losses in the state bracket. Despite already having a spot in the regional locked up, the state championship was just as important for the Patriots.
For us seniors, those Shanley guys have been beating us our whole youth careers, so felt good to beat them again. And then obviously put fear into them and everybody else that we're state champs. You know, we're not just limping into this regional, we're state champs.
Being able to come in here as more than just the host team and have that almost like kind of mental edge to know that we belong here before we even come in, and I think that's huge for us.
8 teams from 5 different states set to meet in West Fargo starting tomorrow. Post 2 did also secure a spot with their runner-up finish since West Fargo is the host. Post 2 will play Elkhorn at 3:30 tomorrow while West Fargo takes on Papillion. The Minnesota Vikings put out their first unofficial depth chart this morning ahead of their first preseason game, including the starting quarterback. Veteran QB Sam Darnold, who was signed this offseason, was listed at the top of that spot. The QB1 job left vacant by Kirk Cousins is expected to come down to a race between Darnold and first-round draft pick J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. We'll see how this fluctuates as the preseason rolls on. And hey, speaking of quarterbacks, one of the biggest weapons in our area received a preseason honor. MSU Moorhead quarterback Jack Strand was named the preseason player of the year by the Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference. Strand was named the offensive player of the year for the conference last season after setting school records for passing yards, completions, and passing touchdowns. The Dragons were picked to finish 6th in the preseason coaches poll. That came out today as well. Bemidji State selected 5th, the #1 team being Minnesota Duluth. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Of course, all this preseason stuff tends to...
Football news gets in that fall mindset.
I'm already there.